Welcome back to The Lean Manufacturer. Today we have the honor to speak with Clay Wilker, a digital transformation consultant in the aerospace industry. Listen to hear about the art of continuous improvement in manufacturing, told by a true expert.
We're talking today about how manufacturers could excel in embracing lean principles to improve their operations, and what better person to have as our guest than Clay Wilker. Clay has been a student of, practitioner of, and now a thought leader in the field of lean. He's been actively sought after as a speaker by members of the lean community as well as by PTC. Welcome to our podcast. Thanks for being here, Clay.
Thank you, Wolffie. It's my pleasure to be here with you today.
So for those who don't know you yet, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming a lean ambassador, really?
Yeah, well, I started out in a company, an automotive supplier that was growing very rapidly, and so we were suffering from those pains of growing that some of us have been through, and we had some leadership that came in that were big proponents of lean in the Toyota production system. Not long after they came in, I also went back to school and got my MBA with emphasis in manufacturing from Utah State University, and that's where I became introduced in 1995 to the Shingo Institute, which is a big proponent of promoting lean manufacturing and awards a prize every year called the Shingo Prize for excellence in manufacturing using lean strategies and techniques. So that's where I got my basis, was early in the 90s from that, and then was able to learn from the Toyota Motor Consulting Division over 3 or 4 years from some real experts in that, and then over my years in being affiliated with the Shingo Institute, been able to visit probably almost 20, I would say over 25 different world-class companies all over the world who are practicing lean, and evaluate them against the criteria and be able to see all the great things that companies are doing out there with lean. So it's gave me a great foundation, and I feel very opportunistic and to be very lucky that I've been in the right place at the right time to really learn more about lean. And I'm passionate about it. I've seen it work. It works wonders and throughout my career in a lot of big contracts we had, not only at Northrop Grumman, but at Autoliv. So that's kind of my background behind that.
And you've segued from the automotive industry over into the aerospace industry, but the shop floor requirements and opportunities remain the same, I take it.
They really do. I mean, there's so much invested in our factories to try to produce the hardware that we expect to for our programs. Companies, most companies can buy materials, they can buy equipment, they can invest in capital and facilities and those kind of things. They can hire talent, but really the thing that differentiates a company is it's how well it does manufacturing, how well it utilizes all of those resources, how well it gets better and continuously improve. That's the real differentiator between a company and their competitors. So it really is the same but different, right? I mean, at the previous company, a lot of high rate production, and other places it's not so high rate, but a lot of the principles remain the same. It's just on a different scale of what you do, and how much money you spend in producing those products. Pennies versus versus hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Now, when we first met, you talked to me about kind of the defining principle of lean being a willingness to recognize and expose problems. That doesn't come naturally, I think, to most human beings to want to expose problems.
It really kind of doesn't. I mean, problems, I mean, the connotation is, well, hey, we've got a problem, right? So people don't really see that as a good thing to have a problem. But, you know, it's interesting early in my career when I spent some time with Toyota, they spent a significant amount of time teaching you very repetitive until it was understood that you understood. And the things that were repetitive were how do you understand how to see waste? Do you understand how to see stagnation in your factory where a lot of inventory is being built up? Those walks, it was a test every time on those walks, and they would point out something and they would say, "What do you see?" And sometimes you failed, and you got salt. You're a bad manager because you can't see it. So we have to continue to help develop your ability to see. But sometimes you would see it and then you would get sugar, right? So anyway, but that was really the start of changing the way you think to be able to see the symptoms of problems, right? And so that was really what they were trying to teach us as they developed that first company into a good manufacturer, was the ability to now start seeing the symptoms, and then you start to see the problems. And then they taught us how to do the 4 steps of doing management, which is all about solving problems. And that was to understand the current condition, understand the problems with facts and data, and go to the source of the problem and witness that, and then develop and implement effective problem solving, and then always follow up to make sure that problem solving is effective and sticks and continues to eliminate that problem. So those things were, you know, how you have to start forcing yourself, because it's not human nature to deal with the problem. We typically like to, you know, if we see a problem, we hide it with inventory or hide it with other things or other workarounds, but we never really get any better when we do that.
You've talked about generations of people learning how to spot those symptoms of problems and trace back to solve the problems using data. If we think about the advent of new generations of technology, the amount of data available to help inform those problem discussions has got to be just overwhelming. How have you seen the industries that you serve cope with first maybe a dearth of data and then a deluge of data? And how are the best practitioners managing that?
You know, I talked a little bit about what you start to see, and when you start into lean manufacturing and the tools, right? The tools in lean manufacturing are pretty much all meant to expose a problem, right? So even down to the basic elementary, the first thing, you know, they say is go 5S your area. And that's really just the elementary teaching of the ability to expose a problem, because when something is not in its place, there's waste that gets involved with that by having to go look for something or move something out of the way. So that's the first thing. Can you see stagnation? That's another problem. Can you see waste? Can you see the problem? Inventory. We've all heard, you know, the analogy of lowering the water and expose a rock, right? And then Kanban, that tool exposes problems with our logistics. So the lean manufacturing wants you to establish standards around everything, and that allows you to determine normal from abnormal. When you do that, there, you know, I guess I'll call it the old-fashioned way, was with clipboards on a whiteboard, hour by hour. You collect that data, you transpose that data off your whiteboards into Excel, you massage that data And so there's a lot of work that goes into that. There's a lot of labor just in trying to get the facts and data from that. And that labor and those calories are being expended to turn that data into information that you can use. In today's world, our companies are ever challenged with getting better. And I'll say it simply, just we're expected to do the same with less or do more with the same. And so we need to transpose or change the way all of that energy that's mining that data, that's capturing that data, that's trying to get that data to turn it into information. We need to change those people and that energy into solving the problems that we expose. And so today, with the advent of digital transformation and a lot of the digital tools for the factory, we now can automatically collect that data, and not only collect it, but also transform that into actionable insights and actionable information that we can utilize, that we can move all of those resources off of managing and mining data the old way and use those resources to solving the problems. And that's a real game changer when you start talking about the transformation of energy in your labor from doing things to be able to enable you to solve problems or enable you to get better into actually getting better because of the automation of that data. And you cut out all of the political, you cut out all of the emotions of that data, you cut out all the I guess I'd call it the gamification of what's really causing our problems. If you've been in a factory very long, you always know, I don't trust that data because they're just out to tell us that our maintenance department is bad, or they're out to tell us that the materials were never delivered when we know they were always delivered, right? So it cuts out all that gaming of the system and gives you a lot better fidelity in your data when you can utilize those new modern tools to capture that data. And then again, get back to solving the problems.
It's an interesting discussion because for generations, people have looked at metrics like OEE to understand how performant a factory environment might be. And that's a metric that's built up of many metrics and to your point, easily gamified or becoming a source of distrust. How have you seen digital technologies transforming the way people get down to brass tacks and really understand performance without all of that politics?
Well, just simply, especially when you can focus on the right places to capture data, capture information, and apply resources that you're going to see some kind of benefit, whether that's in throughput, labor reduction, whatever that may be. I think the importance of focusing in the right spot and then the insights that you get from that starts to bring people along. Again, I mentioned previously about the emotions and about getting all of the what you might call the bad emotions out of that data and information, and just get it down to, hey, it's automated, it's collected, it's straightforward. We're not trying to, pull punches, or we're not trying to make anybody look bad. But the data is just there. And then the ready access, there was always, when you pull all that data together and you put it in charts, you put it in a Pareto chart, then there seemed to always be a point where somebody had to interpret that, and then you get some influence of what people really think it is or where the problems are. The more that you can automate and keep that out of it, to where the tools simply collect the data, they turn that data into information, and then there's no getting around what it's telling you. That's the world that we live in today. We can get down to second and third level Pareto's, which basically spells out the problem, gets you closer to the root of the problem, so that your ability to get after the problem quickly and with good data and information allows you to get after that. When you're able to do that, I think it develops, you mentioned it, it develops some real trust within that we're working on the right things, that our ability to capture the improvements and see that in that the data change and things happen and that's reflective of that. That's part of the other big part of what we have today is the ability to manage and track when we make improvements. We're able to see the categories of that work or that problem, the categories of that problem, how it's impacted. If it didn't impact it, then our actions to go solve that problem weren't beneficial. They weren't effective. If we start to see the lost time in our factory start to go down in that category as a result of our problems, that's really a huge emotional win for the people that are doing that work. I mean, how many times have you went and worked for weeks and maybe months, and then you saw no impact from your work? It is really struggles people to stay motivated if we don't know that the fruits of our labors are being realized. And so that's the other big part of what we have today in our factories is the ability to see those kind of impacts from our actions and the things we do to go solve problems.
Talk to me about your ongoing relationship with the Shingo Institute and the evaluations you've been able to take part in. What does the state of good look like? You know, how lean is the average bear, and what are the best practitioners looking like?
Well, that's that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I've seen some unbelievable things from companies that really adopt it and really live it, and what they're able to achieve from that, and really differentiate themselves in the marketplace against our competitors by doing that. There's some that are early. They're early in the journey, and they're doing great things, but it's early, and I always worry about those that are early in it, whether they will continue to sustain it, whether it's really part of their culture. And so that's something we also look at when we go into these factories. But it's a tremendous model that really focuses a lot on the behaviors around the tools. You know, early on, we had a lot back in the 90s. We had a lot of focus on the tools, and we never really started looking at the behaviors and the importance of the culture change until probably the early 2000s. And then I think the model builds out a lot now where when we go into a factory, we are always not only looking at the tools, but we're looking at the behaviors around those tools. We're looking at the behaviors of leadership in the factories. We take surveys from the employees to see what's their perception of the company, how are they treated within the company. So those are some strong points of that. I will tell you that because I'm a big factory guy, and I come from the factory, and so we always split up, and the examiners go to different parts of the business to try to understand as we are scoring them out. I've been a lead examiner for probably about 15 years now, so I force myself in to go take a look at how do they manage their factory, how do they manage their equipment, and then the other thing is how good is their suggestion system? Are all the employees engaged in seeing waste, identifying problems, and are they good? Are they scientific about solving those problems? And how many of the people in those factories are solving the problem? And I will tell you that the best have a unbelievable maintenance, CMMS, the ability to recognize when a machine's down, the ability, the response time to get that machine back up and running, to continue flowing product through the factory. They are all stellar on that. And the other part of that, the really, really good ones, they have a great Kaizen suggestion system or a suggestion system. And it's not just small suggestions and people seeing problems. They're all engaged in being the ability to see a problem, recognize the business value of a solution, and then help drive those solutions. So if you can imagine, if you're the best and brightest at PTC and you're calling all the shots, right? There's a limitation to how much that you can do there, right? Because you're limited by your skill and ability and the hours in the day. But if you teach people to do what you do, and you can teach 30, 40, 1,000 people, 1,000 more sets of eyes that can see the business value, can see problems, can solve problems, that's the real horsepower behind a company. And so the Shingo Institute has allowed me to be able to witness those kind of things at the companies that are really good, really understand how to get stuff built in their factory effectively, efficiently, for the least amount of cost. And one of the big ways that they do that is they have a real scientific approach across all their employees to be able to see problems and solve problems.
Clay, when I hear you talking about the best practitioners out there, you've talked about organizations that, to my mind, are living their values and creating processes and empowerment with their employees that reflect those values. But it really boils down to trust, bidirectional trust. Is trust something that you can approach using the scientific method, and can you develop trust in a systematic way?
In my mind, just that question, Wolffie, there's kind of two levels of trust. There's the trust that we deal with on a daily basis of how we treat people, how we talk to people, how we respond to people, and you earn that trust by the time that you spend with people and how they see you react in bad times. Typically will expose a person when there's something bad that happens. I always remember that I had a boss and from the previous company that it was it was unbelievable. Whenever something bad would happen, and you would go tell him the bad news, he would say, "Okay, so how do we approach this? How do we fix that problem, and how can I help you?" That was mind blowing to me from the previous company I worked at, because there was always some negativity that happened with the sharing of bad news. So that's the kind of trust that I think we as leaders and a company must reinforce. Back to the problems, right? How do we, as a company, how do we perceive problems that happen to us? Do we perceive it as an opportunity, or do we see it as something that's a real problem? I think it was Lee Iacocca said we're continually faced by great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insolvable problems, right? So he understood that there's always problems out there, but within those problems, there's always an opportunity behind that problem to get better as a result of it. So I think how we react to those problems, which again, we're trying to expose more problems, right? We're trying to get those problems and fix those problems. That should be the way that a leader and that a company should act, is that the problems are good. Sometimes we're not very smart at the rate we expose those problems, or we expose those problems, in places that by fixing them, we will fix the problem, but it may not help us get better. And you always have some of those that you need to immediately go take care of. So I think I think the way that you deal with problems, the way you deal with adversity, really will build trust within your workforce and the people that you work with. The other kind of trust, I think, comes back to the trust that we can earn with data and information, and then it's always important that once you expose those problems, and you have trustworthy, valid, high fidelity data, people start to trust the process more. People start to see what's happening. You can really lose that trust, though, as you start utilizing that data and information of a problem that you need to go solve. If you don't reinforce and provide the resources to go solve those problems, oftentimes we spend a lot of time bubbling the data and information up of where we need to go fix a problem, and we lack the maybe the resources or the importance in the factory to go solve those problems. And as soon as people start to see that everything we're doing to generate good data, generate good information with actionable insights, and there's no resources to go solve those problems, we'll immediately lose trust in the overall process in the factory. So I think those are the two ways that I would say that we can either gain trust or lose trust in the factory.
Clay, beyond trust, what other secret ingredients do you see in your travels that are commonly missing in factories, or places where factories could invest to make themselves better?
We're a society that we need results quickly, right? We expect, from a public traded company has to have results reports quarterly, right? I mean, it's important we report that out. So, and then the annual report. So those are really short term. So we're looking for things to happen quickly and to turn things around. There's not a real appetite for dealing with marginal performance over time, even if you have a good long-term strategy, right? So in today's society too, we look for information is so easy for us to get quickly and easily that sometimes the arduous task of setting things up for the ability to get better data and information in your company, we can become worn out maybe and give up too early. Lean is a lot like that. I know I've seen a lot of companies that say we're going to go embrace lean. They implement the tools, and all of a sudden it exposes all these problems, and they don't have the capability, and they haven't fostered the development and the talent within their factories to be able to manage and take on those problems and solve those problems so that they can see a benefit. And so we kind of put the cart before the horse, or at least there ought to be, if there are two horses, one horse is I'm exposing problem, the other horse, pulling the carriage is the ability to solve problems. So I think oftentimes, and I think with digital transformation, you could see the same thing where we implement, the ability to capture a lot of facts and data that expose a problem. But again, if we don't have the capability and we're not aggressive and have a real process in the system to solve those problems, then people start to become disillusioned with the work and the investment that they have in digital transformation because they don't see the benefit. There are some digital transformation aspects in supply chain and scheduling and logistics where the tool itself helps automate some things, right? And so you get the benefit from that. But I would say at least in half of the digital transformation tools, it's simply exposing a problem that you need to solve. And if you're not ready to go solve those problems that the information is providing, then Lean's suffered from it. The companies that understand that have been successful with Lean. Digital transformation is very similar. I think if a company is not ready to go solve those problems and understand that it's, I'm getting better data, I'm getting better, easier, quicker information, the investment in getting that information is a lot less. I need to transfer those calories over to solving problems instead of mining the data. But I really need to build up that scientific approach. I think back in the days when Toyota was helping us, he used to say that I want to see many young scientists of every type running around the factory helping to solve problems. And so that's really a big part, I think, of what we need to recognize, that that you can always do the tools, but you need to solve problems.
Now, taking shortcuts is so tempting in everything that we do. And now with the advent of large language models and ChatGPT, I think there's an impression, particularly among younger generations, that AI is going to address a lot of these issues and make these problems go away on its own. Do you see AI as a friend to Lean or as a threat?
Well, I definitely think that it can be a friend, right? Correctly applied. It's like, I guess you could say that I have those short-term goals too. I want to see results. I mean, it goes all the way back from growing up on the farm. I used to love to plow grain fields in the fall. You'd see that stubble out there. You'd get in the tractor. You'd ride it all day long. When you get done and get out, you could see all the dark black soil turned over and the stubble that you still had to go. But you could see progress from what you had done. Application of Lean and application of the digital tools that we have today, we really ought to be focusing on applying those tools where we can get a benefit and where we can see, some business value as soon as we can. So we always like to approach that with, I was a big, constraint management believer back in the day. We managed that factory. I managed programs and projects at Northrop Grumman this way, where you focus on your bottleneck or your pacemaker or your factory, you solve the problems there, and you immediately start to see improved throughput out of your factory. Or you see the labor per unit cost go down because people aren't standing around doing nothing while they're waiting for that equipment to get up and running. So I believe in the short-term results also. And so if you focus AI in an area that is taking a look at the gaps in your business, what your business needs, and what AI can give you, either give you to help you solve those problems or give you that data and information even quicker than what you're currently getting it, or help do the analysis of that data that gives you better analytics from that. Those would be good things, right? But I think it's also can be distractful to try to apply AI in areas where even if there is a benefit to the AI, it doesn't give you any benefit to your business or your factory. So you have to be careful where you go apply those things and make sure that it's really addressing the needs of your business and that you can forecast out a benefit from that it fills some of those gaps in those business needs.
Well, Clay, I think we'll leave it at that. You've put a nice capstone on our conversation here about applying AI with a sensible eye towards things that will make a real business impact, short-term and long-term. Thank you so much for your contributions to the Lean community, to the PTC community, and for being here with us today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Wolffie, and it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you today.
Thank you for listening to The Lean Manufacturer. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite streaming platform, and please leave a rating or a review. Be sure to check out other episodes to hear new perspectives on improving life for manufacturers in areas like operational efficiency, quality, sustainability, lean strategies, and the connected worker. If you have a topic of interest, a question, or want to provide feedback, email us at theleanmanufacturer@ptc.com or visit us at ptc.com/theleanmanufacturer.